Hey guys, what's up? Dinko Crikey here with another commentary video. This time I'm going to be reviewing Transformers Robots in Disguise, episode 18. So, episode 18 was actually a pretty solid episode, especially in comparison to the last few, and I don't think it's just because the last few have been mediocre at best. This one actually had a lot of cool stuff going for it, and I think the pros do outweigh the cons. So let's start with the significant points of the episode. This is the first episode with Drift being an official member of Team Bumblebee. I thought this was handled pretty nicely. I like how Drift is a different character from the rest of them. Be it he is kind of a stereotype, he does provide a nice contrast. But what was really cool about this one is that it wasn't overly focused on Drift and, him causing problems and Bumblebee needing to explain teamwork to him and all that kind of stuff. They threw in some things where Drift's like giving the team a difficult time, he kind of insults Bumblebee's leadership, but they really don't overdo it. And then he kind of says something in the end that doesn't give this full closure to the situation, but just ties things up a little bit nicely to realize, yeah, he was kind of wrong. And I really like the way they handled him in this episode. I'm liking him as a member of the cast so far. Then obviously we also have the new Decepticon, Octopunch. Really? This guy's just another con. Probably one who will never ever get a figure, but I don't really think I mind when it comes to this guy. One thing he does have going for him is like Thunderhoof in the first episode he appeared, this guy does actually seem to have something bigger in mind when he goes underwater looking for the Cybertronian warship. I thought that was a really cool throwback, sort of like Thunderhoof with the space bridge, and it made it seem like he actually has bigger plans in mind than just wanting to stir up some trouble. As far as his character himself, I was really getting SpongeBob vibes from him, but I guess the whole underwater theme might have had something to do with that. Still, his whole personality was kind of silly, but at least he was an entertaining villain, nevertheless very forgettable. The next big point was Grimlock's development. This was one of the few lesson-type stories that I actually liked overall. When the episode started out and he gets hit on the training course, I was just like, okay, beginning of episode stuff like this show usually has. And then even as they carried it on, I was kind of just thinking it was going to be a silly little side story. But they actually turned it into something that was a little bit touching. The whole moment between him and Bumblebee was way more serious than we really have seen in the show so far between two characters, and I think it did more for those two characters than really anything has done up to this point. It was almost Teen Titans reminiscent in a way, and that isn't always a good thing, like Teen Titans, but it had a lot of problems, definitely got way too preachy, but I think it was something this show has kind of needed, so big thumbs up there. And it's also a big plus that they had this taken more seriously, yet they didn't overdo it and they still gave Grimlock funny moments throughout the episode. So all of that was really cool. As the shows went on, I've definitely liked Grimlock more and more. I don't know if it's been that way for a lot of people, but that's the way it kind of was with me. Didn't really like him at first, but he's definitely grown on me over time. And I think his character's been a little bit more fleshed out as well, as opposed to someone like Fix-It, who I've really liked throughout the whole show, but there's no denying he really hasn't had full-fledged development or anything like that. So what's some other stuff worth mentioning? This episode gets huge pros for a lot of throwbacks to Transformers Prime. This one really gave me those vibes that, yeah, this is actually a sequel show to Transformers Prime. The whole Decepticon warship was definitely very reminiscent. Maybe some people would have wanted to see a different design, but this is something that's kind of a direct copy, and I don't mind them doing it because it makes sense within the world, and it's just cool to give that Transformers Prime feeling again. Also, some very cool action sequences. Really liked a lot of the angles, the way the perspective kind of moved with the characters. That was really cool, along with a lot of great action sequences, problems the characters ran into. All really cool stuff. And of course, there was the more serious tone throughout the episode. Prime was usually a lot more serious than this, but it does kind of bring back memories of Prime. And then they're using the ground bridge a lot more now, and they use that all the time in Transformers Prime. Actually, I'm not super crazy about the ground bridge as a concept. I do like the way these two shows do it better than, say, Transformers Armada, where they kind of had this magic warp engine, which they didn't really ever explain how they powered it. Did they use Energon? Did the Minicon somehow power it? It was just there, but it does make it a little bit too easy to get from point A to point B, that kind of stuff. Still, it does allow for more locations, so I probably won't complain about it too much. Was really upset that they lost the warship. I would have really liked to see them move that to their base, since their base right now really sucks. I mean, that's really Bumblebee's worst quality as a leader, is that he's kept the Autobots there. I mean, does it make any sense to be in a junkyard, somewhere super exposed to humans, not a whole lot of cover, the Decepticons just right there in their stasis pods, free for anyone to come in there and take? Maybe this isn't the kind of show that should be thought about that deeply, though. It also was cool that they kind of took things into account, like them being underwater. They need to use their comm links to communicate with each other. I enjoyed that. Always seeing stuff occurring underwater is pretty cool. Speaking of the water entering the junkyard kind of felt unnecessary, but they didn't really spend a whole lot of time on it, so I'm not going to complain about that aspect too much. As far as the characters go, Bumblebee, he has his typical stuff, being leader-ish, and then obviously his whole jokes. Some of that's kind of meh, but he did have that good moment with Grimlock, kind of seeing him becoming more established as a leader, all of that kind of stuff. Grimlock already went over it too. Strongarm really felt like she had the least prominent role in this episode, just some funny moments here and there in action sequences. I don't really mind this though, because she's kind of my least favorite of the Autobots at this point. Sideswipe, he's pretty funny, but it was cool that they kind of remembered that whole training course idea and integrated it into the middle of the episode without overdoing Sideswipe's role. So it's really cool they balanced out the characters in this episode, as they did with Drift. They kind of having conflicting with the other Autobots, but they really don't overdo it. Fix-It, other than the voice glitching, he's great. And then Jetstorm and Slipstream, they don't do much significant in this episode, but it's cool to have them in the cast. They're definitely something different. Final thoughts, I did really enjoy this episode, and I think it was a pretty good one. I'm going to give it an 8 out of 10 rating. There's nothing really huge to drive the plot, and a few minor detractors, but overall it's a fun and dense episode. Now, what will that mean for the show's long-term direction? Probably not a whole lot, as it's really episodic in nature, and the show really hasn't evolved much over time, but on its own, the episode is really good. So, those are my thoughts on it. You guys can leave yours in the comment section below. Did this episode help you get any Transformer Prime vibes? How do you like the integration of Drift into the cast? Or maybe you're still waiting for major story details and just getting sick of all of this episodic stuff. Also, drop off any topic suggestions, could pertain to Robots in Disguise, Transformers 5, or the Combiner Wars toy line. And I should add this as an end note, I'm no longer watching the episodes on their Cartoon Network schedule. I'm going online and watching the episodes ahead of time. Basically, I not only want to record the reviews ahead of time to make sure I get all of them done, but I also want to check out Season 2's trailer and give my thoughts on it, but of course I don't want to do that until I finished up Season 1. I'll still be uploading the episodes with their air dates on Cartoon Network, but yeah, I'm going to have watched them all ahead of time, probably by the posting of my next review. Anyways, that's all for now. Thanks for watching, and stay tuned for more weekly Robots in Disguise episode reviews. Have a good one, guys, and see you soon.